I wanted to start thanking you so much for being here today to share your perspective about drum solo performance. I got to know your work through Max from Südtirol Jazz Festival, actually, and got interested. Yeah, and got interested in some of your, in some of your solo projects, which and solo albums, which I find very inspiring. And I thought of getting in touch with you to discuss some matters which I'm currently wondering about and working on myself in my practice, connected also to my PhD research. So to start, I was wondering if you could talk about your background a bit, your musical background, and I was also particularly curious to know about when you started playing solo and what pushed you to start this practice.
Mhm. It was something natural to actually start playing an instrument. I started playing the drums when I was 9, and for the first 6 years, I played only alone. I didn't have a band or anything, so I was only practicing and playing the drums in my basement, and yeah, no shows, no rehearsals, no social interaction through music. And then when I was 15, I had my first band, and then it started. I started having a lot of bands, and also yeah, a huge circle of friends in the music and musician scene. Um, and yeah, so when I was around 17, I went to a jazz workshop in the summer where we were, yeah, going to the countryside for a week and learning a lot of things and also making friends and everything. And from there on, I think I really started to practice a lot and to take it more seriously even than before, because suddenly all of my friends were studying jazz at the conservatory, and I was still in school, but I was kind of, trying to keep up with the level. And I actually started playing, like working in the solo performance and solo concert format. When was that? I somewhere in my mid 20s, I think, or maybe early 20s. There was a choreographer in Vienna who just asked me to do music for one of his shows,
Okay.
which was a kind of interactive, a little bit ironic show that was with audience participation on the topic of a very kind of weird, ironic spiritual yoga session.
Okay.
um, and he just asked me to do the music for it solo. And I said, yes, of course, I'll do it. But I didn't have a solo. I had never done a solo as a performance. So, yeah, I kind of had to invent something quite quickly. And this is actually the root of what I'm still doing today when I do a solo drum performance. So yeah, I actually just went to the studio and experimented with what I already had and with what I didn't have yet. And yeah, like the outcome was a mix of errors and happy failures and also some kind of grooves that I already was familiar with.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that must have been like 15 years ago or so. Yeah.
Okay. And then you kept on, like you like the feeling of playing solo, and
Exactly, exactly. Because actually doing the solo thing is actually very special for me because I'm actually also a painter. I studied painting, not music, and I find that this solo work is closer to this thing when you're alone in your studio working on a painting or something, and you're just there with yourself, and it's more about the structures, the mood, the colors, the feeling, more about this abstract process of getting to a form. And I find this is more related to the fine arts sometimes than to the
Yeah,
musical practice.
yeah. So like through the solo, you could kind of bring together like your like these two different backgrounds that you. Yeah. Right. And do you have any references when it comes to drum solo performances? Like, did you study, or get inspiration from some other drummers' work or from some other artists? It doesn't need to be
Yeah,
instruments.
I mean, not directly,
Okay.
not really directly. I was, of course, inspired and enthusiastic about certain drummers and certain artists. Actually, it's yeah, as you say, it doesn't have to be drum related or not even music related. So sometimes I don't know, a book may be the most influential uh, ingredient, or sometimes yeah. I mean, a very big inspiration is always the field of painting, even if it's not, I never really literally translate something from an external inspiration that another artist brings into my own work, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's like always a kind of ambient surrounding for what I do. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Um, and I was interested to know, and in your solo records and performance, what do you think is the role of composition, maybe programming, and improvisation? Um, yeah, if you could
Mhm.
talk a bit about that, and also how did you include electronics into your project? Because yeah, I went through some videos and some recordings of your solo project, and I was curious to know if like you included electronics from the start, or if the process was like you went from an acoustic set to like
Mhm.
an extended set.
Mm.
Let's say.
I would say that I mean, in this initial experience of this weird choreography thing, I already included electronics. So it was like there from the start. It's more that I did this solo called Le Temps
Mm-hmm.
in 2021, and this is totally acoustic. And I would say I had to arrive at the point of doing a purely acoustic work. It was more the other way around.
It's because you were asked for that, or
No, no, no.
no.
It was a wish to actually, because I have two threads of solo work. The
Okay.
one is Extrametric,
Yeah.
which I released my first record, Extrametric, in 2018, and now Extrametric 2 is on the way. It's going to be released in June. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, very exciting. And this is a musical act
liquid or
where
extrametric.
Extrametric,
Okay.
where I focus on polyrhythmics and polymetrics, and the framework is to integrate the acoustic drum set with also acoustic small percussion, drum synthesizer, and electroacoustic sounds. So to make it kind of a body of sound that produces polymetric structures. And yeah, this is kind of the band sound of Extrametric, even though it's a solo.
Yeah.
And then I have also this other thread that leads more into the realm of fine arts and performance art. And Le Temps is part of this other work that is not purely musical.
Yeah.
It is always also working with musical structures, with sound, but it's not actually music, I would say. Um, and this is more about, maybe it's a little bit more introspective sometimes. It's more about, like in Le Temps, I was focusing on basically like one instrument at a time. So the ouverture, the first piece is, for example, it's only for hi-hat.
Yeah.
And it works with the act of opening the hi-hats over the course of 5 minutes or so. So it's more another kind of focus. And yeah, so the Extrametric series is more about really this sometimes very groove oriented, sometimes also going into the more, what can I say, abstract compositional forms. But it's more about really, yeah, I would say it's more about the rhythmic and groove and yeah, layered pulsations.
Yeah. Listening to Extrametric, I really loved, how you layered, different patterns grouped differently within the beat in, orchestrating them, differently on the set and with the small percussion. And there is like this super powerful polyrhythmic and polymetric component, I guess, that comes through in a lot of your solo and but I guess also ensemble work. And so in that sense, I thought I think your work is very consistent. Your vision is really organic, both in the solo and with other bands of yours. Um, and so, what was the like? In what way you have developed polyrhythm as your main focus and as your main field of interest in Extrametric?
Mm.
You start approaching them, what was the concept in Extrametric of deepening, polyrhythm. Also thinking of like maybe a compositional component.
Mhm. I think I was always interested in odd meter and unusual meters and subdivisions and everything that lies in between the things that are very common. So I started early. I think my drum teacher introduced me to 2/3 when I was around 12, 13, and I was super fascinated immediately. And then I also started composing my first little pieces that were in 13/8 or yeah. So I started with this. I mean, I already had this interest and also yeah, like the question like why do we always play in 4/4 was there from very early on. And I think the focus started really as a drumming challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I was actually like, how independent and interdependent can I become within myself?
Yeah,
Which is still a very good question, not only for drumming, right? So it's a very rich field of you can actually work on that, right?
yeah,
In every sense of the meaning.
yeah.
So I was actually just interested in how does it feel if I play three different meters on top of each other? Because this is one of the most important things I would say in Extrametric, that everything, or at least like almost everything, has to be incorporated, like embodied polyrhythm. It's not that I usually put a lot of polyrhythmic layers into a machine and then I play on top.
Mm-hmm.
So Extrametric is really about embodying all these different pulsations and meters, and to be the diversified rhythm actually uh, in the moment. So I started with this drummer's interest in how can I practice this? Because we're drummers, I think musicians in general, but drummers specifically, we are always busy with that.
Yeah,
Like, okay, how can we practice our independence and interdependence between the limbs so that we can move more freely? And this is like taking it to the next level where it's not only about disentangling um, the natural impulse in the same meter, but it's also shifting it to, like per limb into
yeah,
another meter.
yeah,
And what is interesting for me is mainly now that it's not, of course, I mean, it started as this drummer's challenge, but then of course it opens up a lot of other things that are much more interesting than only this.
Yeah.
Because it's for me, it's really about if I change the structure, so it's not like a song would not be based on one tempo, but on three tempos at the same time.
Yeah. Hmm.
What does it actually do?
To
It
the
creates a space that is totally with unexpected spacings, with unexpected and unusual spaces in between the hits, and it makes you move totally differently and also think differently. And the accents, you probably have a backbeat, but it's of course not on 2 and 4 because there is no 2 and 4. It
yeah.
is somewhere else, but it still works as the backbeat, and it comes in unexpected moments, but it is always, on the point still. So it's like playing with this set of rhythmic references, but kind of in 3D. More. Yeah, and I even think of my rhythms sometimes more as objects
Okay.
because they're really like yeah, like some structures that are really, yeah, they have this object character.
Like plastic or something. Mhm.
Yes, exactly.
And
Mm.
so the rhythms, become the layering of like different polyrhythms become actually the composition, right? In extrametric.
Exactly. So this is like the process is a little bit like I arrive at a core structure that contains all the layers and all the patterns
Yeah.
that I want to have there. And from there, it's like the core, and from there is more like the thinning out and the modeling, like when do I introduce which layer, which sound to arrive finally at the core. So I work from the middle towards the periphery of the track
Yeah. Okay.
usually. Yeah.
Do you have like a backbone of the composition, and then the way to get in or go out is based on like it's more free. Let's say it's more based on your
Yeah, it's more it's like it's second. It comes second
accent.
usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How
Um
much freedom do you have when you play solo?
it depends. For the Extrametric series, I usually have a very defined composition.
Yeah.
Um, it's actually the process is more like, I would say, more like composing new music and not really like it is a hybrid in itself because the process is more new music and the outcome is more electronic advanced club or,
Yeah.
uh, not, it doesn't sound like new music, but it's actually very, also if you look at the partitions and everything is super clearly defined.
Okay, you write
So
everything down like you have.
sometimes I do, yes. Um, After I understood what I'm playing. um, and also if I want to show it to somebody or if I have to prove that I composed something also.
Also, yeah, yeah,
So because oftentimes when you compose without writing, then everybody assumes it's improvisation,
yeah.
which is also, of course, always underrated. Um, so yeah, sometimes, and I also like writing things down because it's also a form of translation. It's a process of translating it even into another medium, and I'm sometimes surprised because I think like this is the layer that is on top, and actually in notation it like sometimes it's the opposite than from what it feels. So yeah.
Okay, nice, interesting. And instead, going back and talking about le ton, which is like this, I would call it more like a sound installation with the display skid, and I love like how you used the super long palettes. They're really cool. Um, and what's the performative idea behind it? And I guess like what can be seen as a drum solo concert or a drum solo performance instead become really like a sound performance or a sound installation. So I was wondering if in this particular solo performance, um, do you draw inspiration from musical theater um, or more like installation and like or within the arts field?
Um, Usually, I feel like the inspiration, as I said before, I'm very I'm going to concerts and shows and reading and I'm totally open for it, but it's not the direction is not that I see something and I'm want to do something similar usually
Yeah,
or something in this direction or so. Usually the things that I do really come more from within, and they are of course also a result of everything that came in before.
yeah,
But I cannot really, I mean, I feel like the direction is more the things are coming from inside.
yeah.
And Le Temps is a very specific work. It's a very also for me special and personal cycle, I would say. Um, and this is more about translating an abstract form, ouverture, this hi-hat opening. It is at the same time a literal opening of this hi-hat, but I I aimed to compose a piece that you have actually to open up to. And I think that if you, I mean, performing it does this effect. I think also from what I know that people told me after seeing it, it's actually if you are there, it also does it to you.
Okay.
So it's like it's opening is a very simple and very abstract movement. Uh, and it has this also equivalent in this very literal way of opening the hi-hat over the course of 5 minutes and yeah, focusing on the sound. How does it change? What does it actually do? How is every phase of it perceived? What is it actually if something is very closed? What happens if it's mid-open? How does it affect the sound? Where does it become blurry? Where does it become clear? What's happening, you know? So it's more this trying to translate a form, in this case, into a performative act and into sound. I also, with Le Temps, it's also, I have a lot of drawings also, and um, it's also works actually with a mural in the back that I'm also painting.
Okay.
So it's really multidisciplinary or multimedia, but in a kind of quite analog way. So usually when we say multimedia, there's a lot of electronics and screens involved. This is not the case
Yeah,
here. It's multimedia, but it's painting
yeah.
performance.
I
And there's
understand.
this one piece that is a sound installation where I use speakers once.
Okay.
So it's like also opening another space, opening the space of the electronic sound that is not as direct as the acoustic sound. It arrives at your body in a different way. Uh, yeah.
Oh, interesting. And the um, is there a thought between like the specialization of the different elements of the drums within the space? Because yeah, lately I'm really thinking a lot about the kind of like the preconceived paradigms and biases related to the drums itself as an instrument as we perceive it since the 1920s, with the hi-hat in a certain position, with the with the and that configuration of the drums, of course. it's totally conditioning our gestures, on the drum set. So I was wondering if, seeing Le Temps, I thought, of, that this could be also connected to this.
Yeah, totally.
Mm.
I mean, this is exactly, this is actually also probably a kind of translation of this polyrhythm into the spatialization, because we are so used to have this and this configuration. We move inside a 4/4 beat with 16th subdivision,
Yes.
because we know we can place a beat here and here. But this is it,
Yeah.
as soon as we introduce another subdivision, like divided by 5, or have a 7 meter, 7/4 or whatever, then suddenly we also have other possibilities in placing something. And this is also the case with the physical setup.
Yeah.
And I started in 2012 with this AZ series that is also a kind of performative reflection of the drum set, but in a very large way. And so I've since that also thought about this, what is a drum kit thing,
Mm-hmm.
because we usually refer to it as one instrument, which is very funny because there's so many instruments included in this.
Yeah.
And also it's a fun place in the orchestra or in the band. You can state that everything would be your drum set. You can say, oh, I don't know, like, this is part of my drum kit, or this is also part of my drum kit. And everybody would say, oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
It's not the case with every instrument, like a piano, let's say, you can open it, you can put a lot of stuff inside. It's still, it's a prepared piano, but it's not so easily extendable or easily reducible. If I sit down with one snare drum, it's still playing the drums. If I sit down in a Terry Bozzio setup, it's playing the drums, So there's this kind of weird freedom that we drummers have in calling our instrument whatever we want it.
Yeah.
We can include everything and nothing in it.
Yeah.
And I was, yeah, this is providing a lot of freedom, and then also to think about, why do I have to sit behind it with this and that configuration just because it's economic?
Yeah.
Because also one layer of reflection is also like, where does the drum set come from? It's also a part of it is also saving money in the theater. If you invent foot pedals, you can save 2 players.
Yeah.
And this is also like why I think we have so much power in a band. It's like we're embodying 4 people, basically.
Definitely.
And this is also like all these performance and performative pieces that I do that are working with another setup. They're also a way of demonopolizing the drums again. So it's not this accumulation of power anymore. It's more like, okay, what happens if we spread it all over the place? What happens if we have to run between every drum or invent these large mallets? What actually happens? What do our bodies do? What does it do to the space? And yeah, this is a meta reflection to also like more directly political issues of what is space, where can we move, where can we do things, what is like preconceived, what do we invent, where can we invent it, what is happening with the space in between things, all this.
So is there like a specific political message behind Le Temps?
Um, I would say specific, I mean, political nowadays often means activist,
Yes.
and I'm not an activist, I'm an artist. But of course, I mean, everything that works with questioning, um, and with anything that is diverse
Yes.
is a direct political issue, I would say.
Definitely. Okay.
Mm.
Wow. Interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much. I was actually reading this book by Paczynski. It's like he made like these 3 books about how the drum was born. And in
Ah,
the first part,
interesting.
he talks about basically the fact that in New Orleans in the orchestras, that once the drummers were able to play together the bass drum and the hi hat, they would still the orchestra would still ask to be paid like as if two people played the drums, if and instead, it was just one person who could play both, but they would still make more money.
Ah,
Uh,
really?
yes, because they could not say that it
Amazing.
was just played by one person, but everybody would assume that it was two, and instead it was one, and it was like the period of beginning of kind of like uh,
Mm.
incorporation of different elements within the kit.
Ah, that's
I
interesting.
found that
Maybe
very
you can send me this book. I don't know about it.
yeah. I'll send you the title of that. It's only in French though, which
Ah, yeah, no problem.
good. Um, okay, and instead, in terms of like the recording process of the solo albums, how were they, recorded? How, if if there's any difference between how the albums are recorded and played live, or
Okay. Le Temps was really, I wanted to record it exactly. Yeah, it's difficult to talk about everything at once because no, actually, I claim that usually when you come to an extrametric performance or to Le Temps, you will hear more or less the things that are also on the record.
yes,
The main thing is to make a record that corresponds to the live act, but I allow myself also to work with the fact that I'm producing a record now, and I can allow myself to do some things a little bit differently than I can do live, because also the live show, of course, it does a different effect.
definitely,
So it's a little bit in between the two. It's not exactly, it's not exactly live. It's not exactly like on the record. Some pieces are pretty much really equivalent. And what I do not do is to add a lot of, um, you know, for Extrametric 1 and 2, sometimes there is a layer added that cannot be done live, but very rarely. So it's not about, super cool, I'm in the studio, I can put everything that I want. Nice. Mm, I try to dose it. And with Le Temps, it was yet another process because, for example, for this ouverture, that is only the hi-hat, I worked for the record, like live, there is no miking at all. It's not even
yeah,
mic. It's
yeah,
not amplified, nothing.
acoustic, nothing.
It's actually amplified through the architecture where I'm playing. So it's conceived for places that have a reverb for galleries or churches or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, but for the recording, we worked with miking with, I don't know how many microphones we put, I think 12 or so. Uh, so some very close to the hi-hat, some very far in the space, some shitty microphones, some very good.
but
And
were you in a studio to record this?
yes, I'm always actually until now working because yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a home studio or anything, and I really like to work with people who know
Of course.
how to mic.
I was wondering that maybe you did a recording in a sound in a gallery, or
No, no, this was a studio recording, yeah. Um, Actually, this one was in a nice architectural office. It was
okay,
not really a sound studio.
yeah,
Yeah.
nice,
So that in the recording also I switched the microphone perspectives. So for example, in the first part you hear this set of mics, and then suddenly it switches and you hear the other set of mics, and then you hear these three, and then you hear this. So you have also this multi-perspective
Planning
thing
kind of.
going on. Yes, where you're hearing the same thing, but the hearing experience is different
Yeah.
because of the translation. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's. Yes.
Um,
And also, Vag is the piece with the very long mallets, with the 1.5 meter long mallets. I didn't record it with the long mallets in the studio. I recorded it
you
with
know,
normal mallets, also because I didn't yet have the long ones, but also just because I also thought about le temps, that it can take on different forms. I could also play the music of le temps sitting behind a set.
definitely. Mhm.
I don't do it because until now I could do the musical performance of le temps just sitting and playing one piece after the other.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was also wondering if you could, if, like, if in your practice you feel that by playing your solo set live, something has changed in terms of how you structure the performance. Like if you do things differently with with performing live, with performing your set live. Maybe not, which is fine.
I try to think about that. No, I don't think so.
Okay,
Mm-mm.
like you remained pretty consistent with your original ideas. Okay.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. It's probably also this painting approach, you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And could you also talk a bit about how you implemented electronics or other percussive instruments to the set? Like what was the discovery process that led you to building your hybrid set? I still, for example, use some, um, the big black pads or sensor on the drum sides. I was wondering, if you I don't know, like if you could say
Mhm.
something about that, how you integrated them in the in the set.
Mhm. So I improvised a lot and still do, but for I would say probably 7 or 8 years I played mainly free improvised music, and with that came also I preparing the drum set with small gear, with small percussion, all this, putting a splash on the snare drum, hanging stuff on the cymbals, all this dampening and misusing the instruments. So the integration of this small percussion comes from there, and then also going more into the context of electronic music and advanced club and this kind of field. Um, I adapted some techniques or some, ways of playing. For example, if you want to really add another layer to the groove, you can play a shaker at some point and all these things. For example, I went to South Korea and I was very interested in the relation that the South Korean have with their shamanistic and animistic music tradition, and with the instruments that are related to it. So I bought a couple of instruments there and tried to learn a little bit of how they speak through these. And yeah, so it's like this mix of encountering an instrument, wanting to reproduce an electronic sound in an acoustic way, and all this. And then for the electronic part, I don't actually remember. I think I was playing the drums in a theater piece, and we used a Nord drum there. And I really liked the sounds that were in there. And then I bought a Nord drum, but another one because they're different versions. And
Yeah, so
my
what an electronic kit was it?
no, it's actually a small drum synthesizer.
Okay, like a drum pad.
Yeah, it's not yeah, it's not really a pad. It's a synthesizer, and you can attach either a pad or you can attach triggers.
Uh-huh.
I mean, sadly, the new version is not including so many trigger inputs anymore, but I have the one that has 6 trigger inputs. So this was the occasion because I actually like to say that I'm just playing a drum kit and not a pad and this and that. So I don't know. For me, it makes a difference if I have a pad with six things sitting in one block, or as I am able to do it with these trigger inputs, I have it integrated in the acoustic drums
Yeah.
because I have my triggers, mounted on the rims.
Yeah.
And it's more a kind of this the feel you have the another physical experience
Yeah. You can
because you
connect.
have not only your right symbol on the right side, but you have also this trigger that you can assign different sounds to, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's more for me more natural.
Yeah.
And then I have also this electroacoustic layer also because I'm using a kalimba
Yeah.
that it's
Mm-hmm.
amplified via piezo
Yeah.
and going through an
Wonderful.
effect pedal uh, way
Yeah.
into an amp. And I work also a lot with low feedbacks
Yeah.
that I produce between, like I put the kalimba on the floor tom
Yeah.
and I'm working with the low frequencies and with the vibrations that
Because I
come
saw
from.
in a performance in a video you did, you were kind of I don't know if that was if I got that right. In fact, I was going to ask you how you produce feedback in in the performance because I thought you were kind of like getting the kalimba and the contact mic close to the dynamic mic that amplifies the floor
Mm.
tone maybe, and
I have a bass amp on stage.
you have a bass sound. Okay.
So I produce the feedbacks with the bass amp.
And that's on your right side.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, the amp is actually facing the floor tom.
Okay. So it's like underneath the floor tom or on the
It's the same height.
okay.
It's sitting on whatever, a stool or, a
Okay.
beer box, whatever.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it's actually directly working through this short distance. Like if you have a guitar and you turn around and do the
Yeah, yeah,
feedback. Yeah.
exactly. And
Mm.
you do that with a kalimba then? No.
With the kalimba on the floor tom, and it works only if you touch the piezo. Because I'm not a specialist in this field, but you close a kind of circle,
Hmm.
and yeah, I can produce different low frequencies through the pressure because actually the drum head is vibrating between the kalimba, and there's also the bass amp blowing into the drum head.
Hmm.
So according to which frequency the drum head can have under the kalimba,
Yeah.
if I push harder, then the frequency will change because the skin has to vibrate in another frequency.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So yeah, and I'm layering these.
Interesting.
I can almost play melodies in this way.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Nice. Yeah. No, I think I was checking out a like a solo you did and you started like that, like to kind of
Yeah.
that. Uh-huh. Nice.
Yeah.
Um, and instead going back to the triggers, what kind of triggers do you use? How do you program your electronics? Like, do you produce some sounds yourself, or what's the process in that?
I have these Roland triggers that you can fix to your rims. They're like wedge shaped a little bit, and they go directly into the Nord drum. And the Nord drum is something that is it's a really nice machine. You have, I think, 200 pre-produced sounds in there, but you can change every single of them in many ways. So you have a lot of parameters, and you can save also, I think, probably 200 presets
Presets. Uh-huh.
that have six sounds each. So you have a lot of possibilities. And I also like the fact that it's not infinite possibilities. I like working with limits.
Of course.
And yeah, so it's like the process of making a new tune is often also looking for a nice sound that is already there and then changing it in the way that I want it, uh,
Yeah.
with lots of possible parameters that can be changed. And yeah.
So in terms of like spatial organization of your extensions, like you have your synthesizer on the north synth on the left side, the amp on the right side, and then I saw you have them a pedal board maybe on the floor on the and then some other pedals on the left, right?
I have actually only a looper on the floor.
Loop, okay, a looper, okay.
Yes, because sometimes I like to loop something. I don't use it excessively, but for some sound layers sometimes, or for one structure that is repetitive, and or for the layering of the low feedbacks.
Yeah.
And then I have a disto, a delay, and a reverb on my left side, but I usually play them with the hands.
Okay, so you have it on a you have them on a stool or something.
Yes, a little table
Okay.
with together with the knot drum, and also with some small percussion with shakers and some gongs and bells, and also a metronome
Yeah.
for some parts.
And the pedals are all connected to the kalimba. Is it a chain?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Nice. And what are the challenges that you face if you face any with performance no with the in terms of like relationing your performance to the space to different spaces, like do you have a specific way to I don't know like to do you like to do long sound checks in order to study the rooms and what's if you have any thoughts about that.
No, thank you. That was a really nice one. If you face any. Yeah. I would say Extrametric is easier because it's a clearly musical act with a clear writer and a PA and a sound technician, and it's like easily exportable. You just come to a space and install your form there. And I mean, I have very clear a clear imagination of how the sound should be, but it's also not so far away from a common sense amplified electronic set.
Yeah.
So people know how to do a drum check. And then I tell them a little bit about, because usually with Extrametric, I don't bring my own technician. So usually I tell them some things about the relation of what comes from the electronic side, from the electroacoustic side, and the acoustic side, and how these should go together, and a little bit, because usually I have this set list that is pretty consistent, because also in itself it is a form. It has a certain function between the pieces so that they can work together. And usually I tell them about this, and I have this one piece for a large tam-tam that is only, for example, 8 minutes of tam-tam crescendo and decrescendo, and I tell them to go with me. So I'm giving them a couple of information, and then it's actually usually I always ask for 2 hours, because the build up, the setup is quite long, because you have to screw all the triggers in and to connect all the different cables and everything.
Now, I was gonna ask if you are independent in terms of sound amplification. Like, do you have your own mic and no, like
No, no, no. I'm in the hands of the sound people.
Cool, cool, cool. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's fun also. It's actually cool. It's a cool interaction. Also, this tam-tam piece is a little bit the playground for them, because I always think that it is great, because I don't know, the sound people are so important. They work every day and they make your sound. They're there, you come to the venue for one day, but they're there every day, basically.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of giving them also kind of a playground or freedom, or if they want, if they wish. If they don't have to. But I have this piece that is this tam tam crescendo decrescendo, where they actually, I asked them to play with me and to emphasize certain frequencies if they like them, and because it's like this huge thing that is inflating, like this huge sound, and a lot of frequencies play at the same time, so it's like polyrhythmic in its own way, like in itself, let's say. And of course, you can change the sound very much with the amplification. So this is also where I invite the sound people to do this at that point. Yeah, so I'm totally in their hands actually.
And in terms of le ton instead, and
Since there is no amplification, everything is in my hands.
yeah, mm-hmm, yeah,
And also, it's interesting because uh, it's so it's so commonplace to amplify everything that nobody ever talks about it anymore. Almost, like depending on in which music scene, but in this,
like
yeah, I don't know, if it's not classical music or new music, you are almost certain that a concert means that it is amplified.
yeah,
And I like also to see what sound actually does if it travels directly from a body to a body. Because if you play an instrument and it arrives just there's a certain quality of directness that is it is deviated. Like yeah, it's like yeah, it's deviated if you amplify it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't arrive the same way.
definitely. And so with le ton, like, is there is there like a study of the room behind the performance sound check?
Yes, I mean, for Le Temps, it's really important that I have at least, I would say, at least 3 hours in the space.
Yeah. Also, like for you to decide where to position the different.
Where, and also, I mean, it depends. I mean, if I do the full version, which includes also the mural, then anyways, I'm in the space for many hours, which is the ideal version, but not everybody can do that in their space.
Definitely.
So it depends a little bit, but if I do only the performative sound thing, then it's still at least 3 hours and at least 3 hours alone, which is also a big difference
Yeah, 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 definitely.
because it's for this piece, it's really important that I can feel and sense the space and do what I call stage feng shui to actually decide where the things are,
Uh-huh.
where will everything be and how will it, like it's more, yeah,
And so you do that by
sensation.
yourself. There's nobody helping you out with the, as an audience perspective for that.
No, I think like this is really
You do.
good if I am alone.
Yeah, nice.
Mm.
Okay, now I guess like we get into like the more anthropological questions, and the first one being, if in your experience, do you think there is a connection between the way you play and your gender or ethnical identity?
Yes, of course. This is like the short answer.
Yeah,
Yes, I mean, since we all are bodies here, so of course everything is connected to this body. And yes, I mean, this is a huge topic,
yeah,
an important one. But it's very, I mean, we could, elaborate on only this question for uh okay,
definitely.
what to say to this. Um
Maybe you noticed that you have like certain certain ways to approach to the instrument which are kind of conditioned by the way as a woman you grew up or you were educated
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, I totally know what I
okay.
know totally know what you're talking about or what the question is like tickling. Uh I think, I mean, one of the very weird things that I realized was that I was never able to just play the drums, but I was always the girl on drums first.
Mhm.
So this is already something that is actually already saying everything about, let's say, being a woman on drums. You're maybe at some point, and maybe nowadays it's already changed a little bit, but it's impossible to just be a drummer.
Hmm.
You always embody something that you are probably not totally aware of when you start.
Yeah, definitely.
So you are actually standing for something. You are a representative of something, um, which is neither is not good, it's not bad, it's just a fact. So yeah, I mean, you can have all kinds of good and bad experiences with that. I mean, I would say it's like positive sexism in my case because I was most of the time people were happy that I was there. They were supporting this girl on drums. Um, they were curious about it,
Hmm.
uh, and so on and so forth. Um, I would say in total, I would say that is a positive thing even though I would have liked to be a little bit less visible sometimes. Um, but it tells us a lot about, like if even nowadays, now that I am a professional drummer in this field
Yeah.
for many times and for many years, and also I have a lot of great female colleagues on drums. If you tell me name 20 female drummers now, I would have to think about it. And if you would tell me name 20 drummers, then it's like, okay, where should I start? So this is still a thing, and it has to do, like, it's a representative case of women should be silent and obedient and etc. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's a very, very in your face analogy.
Definitely.
That is not, I mean, now I talked about the contemporary um, thing, but also in a lot of tribal environments, drumming was very often reserved to the man and also to the spiritual communication with other entities and everything, where women were excluded and for the obvious reasons, probably. I don't know. I don't want to go too profoundly into that because I think it's a very complex,
Better.
uh, yeah, it's a very complex topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you cannot be not aware if you are a woman on drums. If you are a male drummer, probably you can spend your life without being aware of it. So this is already a big difference, I would say.
Yeah. But I guess like nowadays, also like with the whole queer movement, kind of like being a bit more exposed, male and female drummers kind of um, are more aware of like all the conditioning that that are there when we think about the ideal in the collective imaginary, the ideal image of the drummer, which is normally conceived as the cisgender male who embodies features of strength and virility, plays very fast and very technical. And I guess like that's like a conditioning that has been affecting both women, male and female drummers. And so I was, curious to ask you if that, that bias is somehow conditioned, the way you play your solo practice, and what was instead the process of finding your own identity as a drummer through your solo practice.
Yeah. I mean, this identity thing is funny because sometimes I feel like the discussion about this identity is a little bit simplified
Hmm.
because I'm first of all the identity is not something that I'm very busy with as a concept because it's not identity is happening, right? For me. So it's not something that I want to define or find even.
Yeah.
I'm not so, it's not a priority. It's more that I feel like I have a lot of identities that overlap and that change also independently from each other over time with certain events or without any reason. So yeah, I'm also more in this probably polyrhythmic identity. um, and I don't know with this very with the image of the alpha drummer. I don't know if this affected me or not. This is a good question. I mean, of course, I think it did, but like lots of things, watching Disney movies or
Definitely.
everything. Yeah, so it's difficult to tell actually. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, because I feel, like many people many drummers who are now approaching, like a soloistic vision and who are developing a solo process since by now I interviewed, some, they see it also as a way kind of like to um, rebuild or reimagine, rethink, um, the features, the role of the modern drummer or the contemporary drummer. I
Mm.
don't know, kind of like detaching themselves from certain historical or traditional features. I would say so. That was like the
Mm,
reason
mm.
kind of like behind
Yeah, yeah.
the question.
Mm. Uh,
Yeah, but
I understand your question, but I don't really have an answer.
that's good that like some questions remains unsolved. um, and I guess I have one last question for you,
Mhm.
which is why do you like to perform solo, and what are you trying to express to the audience with your project, and if there is any if you have any thoughts about the relationship between the solo and the audience, like the atmosphere, the emotional setting that kicks in whenever you play solo and your audience.
Mm. I had an interesting, a very brief conversation with another musician recently, and I think I understood something about what I do when I talked to this person, because we were talking about. So he is more into this Schlager music, but also weird Schlager. So not the mainstream Schlager. It's like this Austrian hit music. So totally different from what I do. And we were talking about each other's practice, and he said that yeah, for him it was important the he is defining himself as a Musikant, which is an Austrian word for actually a musician, but that is really more coming from the folk music background, more kind of this community member that serves as a musician. And I said, ah, yeah, I totally understand you, but I'm really not that. But it's not because of a disregard. It's like, oh, Musikant is something, you know,
Lower
kind of
or something.
superior or something.
Here.
But just because it's not the right thing. And then we kept talking a little bit about that. And actually, I found out like this musikantische, this quality that he mentioned, was about bringing people together
Mm-hmm.
for a party and to have this community moment.
Uh-huh.
And I think what I do is more bringing each individual inside themselves.
Okay.
This is my new thread of reflection because I think a lot of what I do is about this multitude that lies within something. Like all the sounds that you can find in a hi-hat. It's more than putting a lot of drums on stage. It's more like focusing on something and really doing this introspective work. It's also about what lies between two beats, like how many subdivisions can create a space between two beats. Is always actually about this, I think, really pointing inside. Um, and I feel like the working solo provides me with totally different possibilities in focusing on structures and forms than if I collaborate with other people. And I'm not the only composer because I also sometimes compose for a larger ensemble. Then it's still a little bit like the solo work. But if I collaborate and it's an exchange, an improvisation, a collective composition, or whatever, then I don't really focus on that. Then the things are more, taking the form that they are taking, or it's not the same way of
Okay, you have to make compromises maybe also with other
not
people.
really compromises, but it's just a different process
Hmm.
because it's more about the encounter
Yeah.
or the what we do together, what comes of a spontaneous tryout or spontaneous expression is not always a tryout. It's very often it's not a tryout. What I do is sometimes, you do these improv blind dates where you go on stage and with a person you've never seen. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
Whereas with the solo, you feel, people are kind of more easily drawn to this, vulnerable space also within them.
Ah, probably, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Interesting. Nice. Thank you so much. I don't know if, like you think there's anything we didn't touch upon that, should be important
You had
to know.
really great questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and